Marco, I just wanted to ask you, you got to interview Zorovsky the other day, and I wanted to get your thoughts on just in the organization, how are people responding to his really hot start, and how was the interview?
Yeah, I mean, a colleague of mine was able to do the interview, obviously because of a obvious language barrier here. But in terms of what we were able to get with Alexander, I mean, listen, this is a young kid who's very committed to learning both ends of the ice. Obviously, there's some defensive warts in his game. Transition is still a little sloppy out of the defensive zone and into the neutral zone. But in terms of the offensive abilities, what you can see from the highlight reels are very much what you get. Like, this is a player that's got excellent hands, great vision, has the frame to be a guy that could create havoc in front of the net. Has put on about, I'd say, about 13 pounds. He's closer to 175 pounds now at about 6'2". He's a tough customer. It's just trying to put it all together. And now you even have Ufa trying him at center, which is more indicative of their lack of depth in that regard and less about his career projections. But playing him at center gets him more puck touches, gets him more involved in the play. And I think, from a developmental standpoint, that's something he relishes.
So, like, would the best thing to do would be put him at 2C in the projected lineups, and then maybe even try to pair him up with Demidov?
No, hell, I wouldn't. I would not. I would not suggest that in any way, shape, or form. Like, this is the one thing to be understood here. Center depth, first of all, in the KHL is very difficult, especially when you play in the Eastern Conference. Right, the KHL is split up into two conferences. The richer, more stronger, deeper teams mostly all play in the Western Conference around Moscow and St. Petersburg. Like, that's where the crux of those teams are. And then the Eastern teams are more of the less affluent, less rich teams. You look at Ufa, for example. There was an exodus in their team this year. Lost a lot of players. That's why you have a guy like Zharovsky, who would normally be playing like 8, 9, 10 minutes a game. Because KHL teams are forced to play U21 players, at least one, or dress them. Sorry, in their lineup. So he could have been, a token dressed player, the 13th forward. And here he is playing on average, 13 minutes a game, 14 minutes a game, certain games. I think it's just good for the experience. I don't think he's going to be a 2C in the NHL. Like, I just don't feel like he has the defensive acumen to be able to do so. His coach, Viktor Kozlov, former NHLer, right? This is a guy who gets both ends of the ice. And he's been trying to teach him, like, Zorovsky had one game where he was benched for the majority of the game because of 2 defensive blunders and 2 really bad penalties that he took in the first period. And then he was allowed to play like 3 shifts in the third period, and they scored 2 goals right off the bat. So, like, it's a little bit of give and take with players like that. And so they really want him to learn the two-way aspects of the game. Obviously, like I said, his conference not very strong. So I take the point per game pace right now with a token of a little bit of grain of salt. Like, it's not as impressive to me as what Ivan Demidov did last year, for example, playing in what is the heaviest in terms of talent conference in the KHL, where most of the top end teams outside of Sochi play. And so it's a different dynamic. Demidov's edge work was insane. His defensive game was much higher. Like, if Zorovsky played for Roman Rottenberg last year, he probably wouldn't be seeing ice right now. That's how different it was. Demidov's shot, I think, is much better. His ability to attack open ice is obviously more refined, and just elite skill overall, not simply just the hands, but just the footwork as well that goes with it. So very much a different tier of player. Now, obviously, it's never a bad thing when you have a Canadiens prospect like this that's drafted out of the second round that's producing to this level. It's always good for the confidence. It's good for getting him going. But he knows that he's got to get good two-way, because Martin St. Louis is not going to have any patience for that once he gets to the NHL. And this is a kid that would rather stay in the KHL than go to the American Hockey League for obvious reasons. So if he's going to make the jump to the NHL, he knows his game is going to have to be mature.
Yeah, so Blue Chip, I know that
Yeah.
out of the draft, you were talking about how he was one of the best puck handlers, and what have you kind of seen out of his game, and just any follow-ups for Marco?
Yeah, I feel that. Well, it's funny because a lot of what Marco just said is what I was writing right before this podcast. I was doing a report on him, so a lot of it of what he said is in my report. But basically, I feel like he's a little bit of a change player. Last year in the MHL, it was very, very junior style, a lot of space around him, so we didn't really have to like use his physicality or use his body to shield the puck. There was always like 5 or 10 foot around him where he could handle the puck and do whatever he wanted. And then when he went to the KHL playoff, he had to adapt his game, and he adapted pretty well. But then this season, he plays more of an NHL style, less of a junior style, in the sense that he plays close to the net. If you look at all of his goals, they're all between the dotted lines. Like, there's not a single one that's from the outside. It's all between the dotted lines. He makes plays to the inside. He drives the inside. He's not the best skater out there. He's not explosive. He's not, like Marco said, he doesn't have the edge work of Ivan Demidov, but then not many players have. So, like, he's not on the same level, but I feel like it's trending very well. Like, it's trending for a player that should have been taken in the first round instead of the second round. So for the Habs, it's fantastic because not only they got Noah Dobson by trading their 2 first-round picks, but they also got a player that's trending maybe top 6 in the NHL in the future if everything goes well. Like Marco said, yes, there's some work to be done for the two-way game. There's some work to be done for his physicality, but I think the compete is there, the skills is there, the IQ is there. It's just like time. This guy was never a short-term project. It was always a longer-term project, and it still is.
Yeah.
That's not going to change, but I think he's trending exactly where the Habs wanted him to trend.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly it. And, there was talk of him potentially trying to get out of his contract to come to North America as soon as this April. That was spectacularly shot down by agent Dan Milstein on X. And, one of the things I could tell you is the Canadians are very comfortable where he's at. He's getting minutes. He's going to keep getting minutes, and his minutes are going to go up. He's being used in prime position, which is center at this point. He's being given a lot of reign to be able to maneuver offensively and try things out. On the power play, he's basically their quarterback when it comes to being able to run it from the left circle, right? Like that's where his bread and butter is right now. And I think by giving him those opportunities, there's less of a rush with Demidov, right? Like with Demidov, there was first of all, this future franchise player, B, there was an entire political situation in the backdrop happening with Ska as well. I'll never forget this. We found out that Ivan Demidov was coming because we were interviewing him, and he had to pause our interview mid-interview to sign his entry-level contract. Right? Like, there's no better way to fall into information than that.
That's crazy.
And we had to keep it under wraps until Ska made the announcement, because or else Demidov would have been stopped at customs in Moscow on his way to Istanbul in Turkey, and there could have potentially been some political blowback. They could have withheld him like they did Ilya Sorokin back in the bubble during the 2021 playoff, or the 2020 playoff, sorry. So it's just, they don't want to chance stuff like that. Well, you can understand the gravity of the situation with Demidov. Zorovsky is nowhere near that level. Ufa is not in a position to play the games that Scott does. They're just happy to have him. It's a serendipitous moment that they happen to get this guy who this time last year wasn't even on Central Scouting's radar, and then finished the year 5th for European skaters on Central Scouting's ranking, right? So like, you can see that there's been a sharp progression curve. The Canadians are very comfortable where he's at. Nick Bobrov, their co-head of scouting, the one that takes care of mostly of European scouting, very active in talking to Zharovsky on a regular basis after every game. Very grateful in that. And I think that, when time will come, there won't be any drama when it comes to Zharovsky coming to North America. It's just a question of when he'll be ready to play that kind of NHL game.
And there's really no reason to bring him to North America right now anyway. Like you said, the He's playing minutes. I think yesterday he played like 17 minutes in the game. So, I mean, that's plenty of minutes against pros. So it's really not an issue. And he's being coached by an ex-NHL player. So he's in a very good situation.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks for Salavat Yulayev that they don't have money. They don't have other players. But, I mean, in the same time, it's very good for Zharovsky. He's getting a ton of experience. So really no reason to bring him here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like it's the same thing. Like people used to say the same thing about Matvei Michkov playing for Sochi instead of Ska when he was in the KHL, but it afforded him so much more playing time, right? Like you don't play with the best players, but I don't really. If I'm the NHL team, I couldn't give a rat's behind if you played with star players. If it forced you to be more of a play driver on your own, then the benefit is all to you because these are habits that you can then transfer to the NHL, right? Mm-hmm. That's using your teammates is like the easiest skill on the planet. Like you basically just have to trust somebody. But if you can drive play and learn to drive play and gain habits in being able to not only drive play, but also limit, any kind of damage defensively, that all translates to the NHL game. So I have no problem with Zharovsky being on an island by himself without, much NHL experience outside of the coaching staff. That's not a problem for me. And the Canadians are more than happy to wait it out because look at their lineup right now. Where would he fit? Yeah. They're having trouble getting Demidov, who is in the running for the Calder, more than 14 minutes a game. So it's a little different in that regard. Michael Hage is someone that could also be joining at end of year if he signs his entry-level contract. That's another roster spot. Like, where are you going to have room for him? So there's no rush. He's still got a year left after this season on his contract with UFA, so not really worried in that regard either. Ultimately, at this point, the Canadians, for all intents and purposes within the scouting community, seem to have an early day draft steal on their hands in terms of the value that they're getting from him already. But, I only acquire someone as a steal once they're able to produce the same amount or to the same hype at the NHL level.
Yeah. I think he's produced more, and as soon as the draft, it was a draft day steal, especially with Dobson. And I know the Islanders got a few guys like Victor Eklund and Aitchison, but Dobson has looked fantastic, and he is a top pair right-handed defenseman, and it took Josh Doan and like a top 4 right-handed defenseman to get JJ Peterka, who is a star left winger. So I think that getting Dobson and Zorovski, who the Habs wanted in the first round, was just absolutely a heist.